you're here, and before I turn this over to the Colloquium participants and you, let me just remind you of a few things. First of all, did Marilyn and Paula standing outside there? I want somebody to bring Paula Weinberg in. All right, come down here to the front. There have been, by the way, extraordinary help from volunteers and staff, and so many that I cannot read all their names. Their names are in the program book. But the two people who managed it all are standing right there, and they are Marilyn Rowans and Paula Weinberg. And we've had wonderful support from generous people who have offered gifts to support this, and also we're very grateful to the maintenance and custodial people who have had a real... Let's give them a hand. Bill, is Bill here? Give him a hand. And now I do want to remind you that there will be tapes available of all of these sessions and presentations, and you will receive notice of their availability, and they'd be wonderful educational tools for your own communities. Now, what we want to do in order to conclude is, first of all, I'm going to invite all the members of the colloquium, the participants, to make a final statement about their experience, and then, or for us, and then throw it open to your questions addressed to the whole colloquium or to any member of the colloquium that you would choose. So we're going to start with Manny. Would you make a closing statement, something that you'd like to say before? Or
I hope that you learned something from me. I certainly learned a lot from all of the members of the panel. I am very grateful for this experience. I would like to join the movement. And the movement can change me as long as I can change it too.
Secret cells of Daveners. No. We welcome you. We'd love to have you as part of it. Dan?
I certainly echo what Jack said. What Manny said at the beginning of his statement. I'm not going to join the movement. Can we make a statement, an ideological kind of statement as well?
Any kind.
Okay. And this is meant as a suggestion that we might, if you feel so inclined, might respond to. I think it was Abba Eban, at least he's credited with saying that the Jews are the people who refuse to take yes for an answer. And running through the dialogue and through the presentations, at least I perceived, rightly or wrongly, the sense that that's what we are doing. We are refusing to take yes for an answer, meaning that this incredible opportunity, freedom, although it isn't perfect, it's certainly becoming what none of our ancestors, even 2 generations or 3 or 4 generations ago, could possibly have dreamt of, let alone expected to see during this century. In the light of this success and opportunity and freedom, and the assimilation that has also been a consequence of all of these benefits, is it possible that the Jewish enterprise, and especially Judaism, is over? And that without the persistence of anti-Semitism, and again, there is evidence that it is on the decline, and perhaps we may usher it out altogether in the 21st century. Without anti-Semitism to remind Jews that they're still Jews, is it possible that it is over? And let me just conclude my question with a statement from an Elaine Marks. I don't know if any of you have heard of her, a professor of European literature at the University of Chicago, of Wisconsin, who said, quote, "I am Jewish precisely because I am not a believer, because I associate from early childhood the courage not to believe with being Jewish. Choosing to deny Judaism, and maybe even Jewishness, is a quintessentially Jewish act. And the Jew who rejects Judaism is, in a very ironic way, the most committed Jew."
Well, that's another colloquium. No. And it's a very powerful challenge, but I don't think we're going to have time for the colloquium panel to respond to it. But what you articulated, obviously, is the challenge of freedom. And so what we'll do is take it and go from there at a future colloquium. Thank you. All right, thank you.
Right. Just two things very briefly. The first is, I don't think anyone who is affiliated with secular humanistic Judaism should underestimate and underrate the importance that this organization has. We live in irrational times. There is the respectable irrationality of triumphalist religion, both Jewish and Christian, in the United States, and it is monumentally powerful. When presidential candidates have to profess their religious faith before the American public in a country with a secular government, we may be in trouble. And then there's the non-respectable type of irrationality that we find in occultism and so forth. It's all over the place. We have to see ourselves, okay, as part of a vanguard, part of a swelling community of people who stands against that irrationality, because in the final analysis, democracy and freedom are dependent on people who can make critical judgments. Okay? It's a very, very important mission. Keep it up, and don't underestimate your importance. The second thing I want to say is more personal. Humanism is as humanism does. And I've got to say, I've been in many forums, academic, quasi-academic, popular, and so forth. I have never seen ideas enveloped in greater warmth than I have seen around this colloquium in this room. It is a mixture which, for me, I can't say it's a religious experience, but I must say it is a profoundly fulfilling one. So often we depict the life of the mind, the intellect, as being cold, indeed as contrasted with the emotions that are warm. This colloquium, for me, has proven that dichotomy to be false. Thank you very much.
Several years ago, my wife and I did a book together called The American Jew, and we surveyed a wide variety of Jews from across the religious and non-religious spectrum, including two very interesting humanistic Jews. Now, I think what I've witnessed in this weekend, I feel it's been a month, but in this weekend, were many new, interesting voices. I think very recently, really in the last 5 years, there has been fundamental change in Jewish life. People are seeking new pathways. The humanistic pathway is one of the pathways. It's a pioneering pathway. Humanistic Jews, like Sherwin-Wine, were seeking to reconstruct Judaism, to reinterpret it and understand it in new ways, long before this efflorescence. But there is, I think, an efflorescence. I think Judaism is increasingly more fragmented. It is cracking up. There are new voices, new directions, new ways, new kinds of rabbis, Jewish renewal rabbis. There are new institutions that are ordaining rabbis. I think we're witnessing a real search within the Jewish community for reconstruction, a new mixture, a new way of finding Judaism meaningful. And humanistic Judaism has an important message. If you use the model of the marketplace, you are making your vision known. Sherwin-Wine is eloquently proclaiming that vision, in this marketplace, you need to be sure that your voice is heard. I'm sure it will be, but it needs to be heard because on the threshold of a new millennium, a new century, we're going to see a new kind of Judaism emerge. And I hope you're there to convey your vision of what it should be like.
Someday in maybe 60 years, there'll be a couple of guys sitting around at the Jewish Community Center, which at that time will be on 112 Mile Road. And their names will be O'Brien and McCarthy, and they will hearken back to their youthful days 60 years ago in the Jewish community, and they'll say, do you remember Rabbi Wein, you know, that old Jew? Had so much Yiddishkeit, you know? And they'll say, boy, they're not making them like Sherwin-Wine anymore. And we're just not going to have any kind of Jewish future at all. And so what I want to say to you is relax and enjoy your lives, enjoy the Jewish part of your lives, enjoy the Israeli part of your lives, those of you who have an Israeli part, and we will continue churning out Jewish babies, and you will continue to churn out your grandchildren and grandchildren, and they will be Jewish in the ways that they want to be, and we'll all meet. Well, I can't say we'll all meet in heaven, but we'll all meet in the great meeting place, wherever that is, and we will look back and rejoice at the security of a Jewish people which is in transition and getting better and not worse every day and every generation.
Well, Zev, I envy you, your sense of humor. Really, I'm always so serious about this Jewish problem. It bothers me. I'm among those who don't take diaspora as an answer, but we don't need this kind of an answer. Once we have a state of Israel, the diaspora is here, it's a fact, and we do respect it because we respect the freedom of everyone to live wherever he wants and the way he chooses. So the diaspora is here and not under pressure, but because you want it. So we respect it very much. And we are happy that we have a state. And I feel very close to every Jew, even if he's not organized. It's enough that he has the Pintaleid. The Pintaleid is the chirik, this little dot in after the Yud, under the Yud. If he has this feeling, if he will be in trouble and he'll need us, we'll accept him. And when we will be in trouble and we'll call them, I am sure with the Pintaleid, he will be counted and he'll appear and do his job. So there is a future to the Jewish people. I know wherever they are, I'm not afraid that the Jewish people will disappear. I thank you, the audience, I admire you. You didn't have to sit all the time around the table. And the way you were sitting here and listening to all this our blah blah so seriously, except him, all of us were so serious. And you were listening and sitting with us, and even I had the impression that you enjoy it. So really, I admire you. And I'm grateful to the people who are sitting here. I learned a lot from them, and I have new friends, and I heard new ideas. And thank you, Sherwin, by being my friend for so many years and inviting me, insisting that I should come. Thank you.
I would like to add another guiding principle to this principle that Sherwin has spoken this morning. Have nachas with a Jewish experience. Enjoy your Jewish experience. And indeed, we are a very strange kind of people because we are questioning ourselves, who damned it are we? And in this we find a terrible joy when Jewish generation asking ourselves who we are. It's very, very Jewish, and it's going to go on like that for a long time. And I hope we will go on questioning ourselves for many, many years with many questions that others even care to ask. And that means there is something special to being Jewish. And if we want to conclude somehow this colloquium, as Shula says, there is something special with the Pintaleit.
I believe that in meetings like that, we see the great differences between Jews living in Israel and Jews living in the United States of America. But we also see the interdependence from a cultural point of view. We didn't have time during this colloquium to talk about the whole scene of Jewish culture, but there's no question in my mind that it's now the time to prepare programs in which people, programs, books, anthologies, CDs, to prepare the tools to enable Jews to recognize and to know the Jewish scene with all its variety. Not only Hebrew and Yiddish, but Hebrew and Yiddish and Ladino and English and German and Russian and Polish and Spanish, in all the languages, in all the countries, in all the media that Jews created. Not only in our era, but in other eras. I'm happy to be involved now in one of the enterprises that's spinning out of our college, which is, it's called the Posen Library of Jewish Culture, which is starting to prepare things like that, because this will help the dialogue in the future between the various Judaisms in Judaism. And I think it's important not only that you will know our culture, the Israeli culture, but it is also important for the Israelis who do not have communities, who do have, as Shula said, concert halls and theaters which try to replace the synagogue, but do not have communities and have to have communities, and this they can learn from you. And finally, I'm grateful to all the people who participated and all the people who listened to us, but I'm also grateful that I have a new convert to atheism, many.
There was a bargain struck, and I want you to know what the bargain was. I joined, and Yaakov said he would not be afraid to use the word God anymore.
Let me take this opportunity on behalf of all of us to thank our colloquium participants who came, in many cases, from long distances to be with us. I do want to say this is our third colloquium, and for me, it has been our best colloquium. I think the chemistry around this table has been wonderful. New friendships have been made, and I think there was great respect and admiration among all the people here, whether we agreed or disagreed with each of us and for each of us. And so it has been a wonderful experience, and on behalf of all of us, we want to thank you. Thank you for coming. Now, as Yaakov said, one of our privileges is you can watch us, but we watch you, and it's true. We were watching you, listening and taking notes, and being interested and absorbed in what was going on. So we want to thank you for being such a wonderful and incredible audience, and we on the panel are going to applaud. Now, the floor is yours. This is the time for you to ask your questions, and you can address it to either the whole Colloquium panel or to anyone. And we will start with Ed, and then we'll come. I see. Oh, you have the.
I have the mic.
Oh, you have the mic.
Oh. Do you want us to identify ourselves?
Yes, give your name.
Hi, I'm Miriam Goodley, the Northern California chapter for the Society of Humanistic Judaism and the home chapter of the national president, Bert Steinberg. And I agree with you. This is the third colloquium, and there just was a camaraderie around the table, which was not there before, and also in the audience. Now, I'm known as a professional shit disturber, and I sometimes, you know, in our chapter, I say things that bother me, but Shula, don't worry, I do the same thing at Hadassah conventions.
Okay.
And
Do you have a question?
Yes, I would like to ask, yes, in our Sidura, whatever you want to call it, there's always, we as humanistic Jews like vegetables, always something good, and that we put in that, why can we not say we as Jews? Because I'd like to feel much more united. I don't feel we have to separate ourselves as if the others were something less than we are. I want that feeling of oneness with all Jews.
Okay, bye. Was that the question?
Changing the wording.
Yeah.
Somebody is different, he's not less. He's just different. And we respect somebody who is different, but he is different. So that's why you say we as humanistic Jews. And it's not less.
Thank you. Mike, if we pass the microphone down. All right, great. Thank you, Jane.
Jane Goldhammer, Portland, Oregon. Which way should I face?
It doesn't make any difference. The question.
Talking to you.
Yeah, right like that. That's fine.
This is my third colloquium. I did not think it could be as good as the last one, but it has been, and it's been. Thank you. I am a lover of words, and there are about 3 words that I would have liked to have heard hammered on more, shouted maybe. One is relevance, without which continuity has no meaning. The second one is, what was it? I said it to you. Responsibility. Personal responsibility, which I think is one of the biggies in humanistic Judaism. The third has to do with the relationship between rationality and non-rationality, as opposed to irrationality, which is on the other side. But the two go together, and the third is something different. Thank you.
Great. Why don't we just bring the microphone down to Shell? Question, yes.
My question, I'm Sheldon Schaefer of Birmingham, Alabama. My question really constitutes, I think, the other side of the coin raised by Dan Friedman. When I was in graduate school 2 generations ago studying economics, I learned that the heart of an institution is a core idea and some reinforcing and implementing mechanisms. As I sat through this and the 2 prior colloquia, I gathered that the impression that Judaism is sort of like an amorphous protoplasm moving through time and space, putting out a tentacle in each society, in each particular location at a given point in time. Well, if Judaism can be just about what any Jew thinks it is, according to his or her own sense of identity and definition, then it can be anything. And if it's anything, isn't it nothing?
Zeb, do you want to?
Thanks.
I'm not picking on you, but I think.
You know what Woody Allen says, if the ends don't justify the means, then what does? I think, I think that it's a very good, it's a question that all of us have thought about, and if you dress for it, it's pretty clear. I mean, when you put on the shtreimel in the morning, it's pretty clear that you're Jewish. You don't have to, if you're not wearing the uniform and you're not living in the particular place, in the geography, and you're not speaking the language, those things all make it very clear. But after that, it starts to get a little bit iffy. It's sort of do it yourself. And really the kinds of Judaism, even the organized kinds, are somewhat do it yourself, or somebody started to do it himself or herself and others joined. And I don't see anything particularly the matter with that. I think that Shula Aloni's point about the little dot, that little spark of Judaism, I think that's about all the definition you need. And I also have a feeling that through life, Judaism flows through people's lives. It's not a constant. Sometimes you need it more, and sometimes you need it less. Sometimes it's more present, and sometimes it may be less present. But as long as you yourself, or each person, has a sense of him or herself as a Jew, I think that's fair enough. And then, as you say, it does move like protoplasm. But it moves like a parade, with people falling off the wagon and people jumping on the wagon and running behind as it goes to the next village. And I don't have a problem. I think that we run into problems when we try to nail down the definition. I think we need to learn to relax with the amorphous state in which we live, because somehow we manage to keep moving.
Yeah.
The core idea? Well, I think there are various core ideas. Certainly in this congregation, you wouldn't say that the core idea is God, which I think would be the answer that the Orthodox might give. So you've already not had that core idea. Can't be blood. We don't believe in that, and Jews don't have a common blood. They're not a race. It can't be ethnicity, because we have so many, Jews from Yemen and Jews from Poland are not the same ethnicity. It can't even be a common history, because we really don't have common history, except for what we arrogate to ourselves. So I think what it has to be is a common consciousness, or recognition of ourselves in connection to this body, whatever this body means to us. And the optimum for me is if we could reach the point where various Jews respect one another's statement, I'm Jewish. And I respect that for whatever it is. If that means you're Jewish and you keep every one of the 613 mitzvot, well. If it means that when you eat bacon, like my father did, every time he ate bacon, he said, "Oh, I'm eating bacon." That's also okay.
Can I?
Yes. Joe?
I'd like to try and answer a somewhat different one. I take the question very seriously, and I think it's a very important question. I think there's nothing new under the sun, really. And even the radical who breaks ranks radically and thinks he's doing something new is still corresponding and answering something old. And as I listen to the process around here, and I can be corrected if I'm wrong, everyone who spoke with their variety of Judaism lodged it in contrast with some other form of Judaism already extant. Nothing came de novo. Nothing was ex nihilo. Nothing, to use very non-Jewish terms, nothing came out of nothing. In other words, I think that everyone who creates a new form of Judaism, or any group that does, or any new Judaism that evolves, is in what we might call technically a dialectical relationship with what it is they're moving away from, as it were. So I think that the person who is going to go off on a creative endeavor with regard to Judaism still has to engage in what I would call a responsible creativity. That is, to look at what that person is doing with a serious reference to the Jewish environment out of which they're developing that creativity. I don't know if that answers your question, that anything new has to refer responsibly to what indeed it is moving from in order to, in my mind, to have the type of legitimacy or ultimately the type of attractiveness that it needs to have.
I agree with all of the formulations that have been...
Want to use the microphone?
Oh, sorry. I agree with all... I can accept all of the formulations that have been given here, but I'd like to give you my own. Having been a rabbi for 40 years and having studied Judaism, I look into the past to see if there's something there that I can appropriate for myself today. Traditionally, it has been said that Judaism is three things: the Jewish people, the Torah, and God. Now, what does that mean? The Jewish people means the group. Being Jewish means having some kind of a feeling for the group that you act on. Secondly, it's Torah, which means the culture. Being Jewish means participating in the culture, trying to get to know the culture. And finally, God means the quest. The wonderful thing about Judaism is that it has never been finished. It has always been in search of something better, something higher, what William James called the more. He didn't like using the word God either. So he called God the more in the universe. Judaism has always been questing for that more. Those three things: the group, the culture, and the quest.
Question? Yes, Ed?
Edward Klein, Queen Society for Humanistic Judaism. Morris Sukenik, my madrich, and I would like to invite Manny to attend the Queen Society, and I assure you we will do some God wrestling. I'd like to address a question to the Israelis on the panel. I'd like to know your thoughts on the binational democratic state.
What? Binational.
Binational democratic state, Israel.
I think we have to clarify. Binational means instead of two states, Israel and Palestine, a single state that would accommodate both Israelis or Jews and Palestinians. Okay. Who would like to begin?
שכחתי שאתה קיים, לא היית פה כל יומיים.
No.
Israelis are intolerant even if they give each other the possibility of talk.
No, I was looking at it, I forgot
I think that Mrs. Aloni ought to answer this first.
2 days it was empty, you see, so I was referring to him, I forgot that. No, דבר.
I'm against it.
Are you against in principle, or are you against because it's impossible? Are you against because it cannot happen? The question was, there are two people who have their own narratives, their own history, and different faiths and different way of lives. And each of them wants, after a long time, not having their sovereignty, to gain their dignity and their sovereignty. And as long as the Palestinian people will not feel equal and have their freedom and have their dignity and have their sovereignty, we cannot speak of a binational state, because it won't be. It will be a state where one people is oppressing the other, economically, politically, and with strength. And we can see in Israel already how many things that might is right. So from the humanistic point of view, we cannot speak of a binational state because there are those settlers who already grabbed out of greediness, took over the property of the Palestinian people. So there should be two states, and each of them has the right to live its own life. In the long run, we can never say, because we see what happens in Europe, and we have Shimon Peres, who is speaking of the new Middle East, a Gemishen Ezach, which no one knows exactly what it will be and how it will happen, but time will say. Maybe we'll have something like in Europe, a kind of unity or other conventions or something like this. But first of all, you have to respect the others and to let them to live their own life in dignity. Thank you.
No, I agree. I was for a binational state many, many years before there was a state.
I see.
But then when there was a state, we realized that this is impossible.
All right. Question down there. Peter, get the microphone. Thank you.
More of a statement. I was very taken by Zev's comment on Thursday night when he said that it's when we get off the plantation, we'll know who we really are as the Jews. And it reminded me of the story of why the Jews had to wander around the desert for 40 years to get rid of the slave mentality. And until they finally were able to do that, they couldn't be free.
Then we developed the retail mentality.
Well, okay. No, it's wholesale. Right? But I did want to say that that we are off the plantation in this room. And in response to Yaakov, who said we need to have more symbol and more art, I don't want any of us to forget what happened here Friday night. Friday night was ceremony. And Friday night made us thrill. And Friday night brought tears to people in this room. And there was not a cerebral moment there. That was an emotional moment for this community, for this movement. And it made all of us proud. And we were all off the plantation on Friday night.
Yes, question. There's a question. Well, question back there, and then we'll come down with the microphone. No, you have it back there.
Oh, thanks. Well, it's undeniable that Judaism over the ages has not been monolithic. We've dressed differently, we've spoken different languages, we've behaved differently, we've worshipped idols, done all those things. But one thing I think that Judaism over the ages has not subscribed to, and that is fundamental number 9 of Rabbi Wein, and that is do not put survival first. I detected from Rabbi Wein and from Zev and from less so from the other panel members that the survival of Judaism is just not that important. It is one source of inspiration among many. And if you can get inspiration from it, great. And if you can't, do it in your own way. But it is not essential. And I think over the ages, generally, of course, individual Jews walk their way to the baptismal font, either willingly or unwillingly. But never was there a stream that I know of that advocated, survival of Judaism is not important.
You are wrong, because we take for granted that Judaism will survive. That's why we don't have to speak so much about something which we are sure that will happen and is there. We took it for granted that Judaism will survive.
Annie, did you want to say something?
As one who is very, very much concerned with Jewish survival, your formulation was not correct. Jews did not die for survival. Jews died for the higher things of life, which meant something to them.
Because they killed them.
No, people died al kiddush Hashem. That means for their highest ideals, for truth, for justice, for freedom, for right. They didn't survive for the sake of survival. They survived. They strove to live and die for the highest things that they knew of in their lives. That's where Judaism has changed. Judaism has always sought to associate itself with the highest conceivable ideals and aims of life.
Well, just a footnote to that point. It seems to me that Jewish survival must be for purpose. It shouldn't just be for Jewish survival itself. If Judaism and Jews are to survive, they must survive for a reason. And that reason is something that we need to establish for the future.
What I've noticed in life is that those people who are obsessed with happiness are never happy.
That's right.
If all you think about is your happiness, my happiness, my happiness, my happiness, you'll never be happy. You have to have some goal beyond that. And if that goal is exciting and meaningful to you, then happiness is not the goal, happiness is the consequence. And if indeed Jews are engaged in meaningful activity, ethical, cultural, whatever it be, those goals, then the consequence of it will be Jewish survival. And if they don't have anything beyond, no matter how much they talk about Jewish survival, we will not survive. Now, we have a question down here from Northern California.
Have heard the word spirituality and spiritual used by many of you on the panel, and I very much appreciate the discussion of Dr. Malkin this morning on that subject. At home, we have discussed this ad nauseum. Nobody can agree on what it means. A lot of people think you can't define it without reference to religion, but I think you can. But I would like to hear other people on the panel give their answers to what is the definition of spirituality.
Sure. Okay, I'll try to give as concise answer as I can, because someone, I think, Yaakov had said it's a type of weasel word that you can pack a lot of different meanings into. I think there's a conventional definition of spirituality, and let me call it a contemporary definition, which is in vogue today. The traditional meaning of spirituality is to have a belief in and a rapport with spiritual beings, okay? And in traditional theology, Jewish, Christian, and Islamic, the notion of reality is such that it is twofold. There is the material and the spiritual. There is the creator and the created. There is heaven and earth. There is body and mind, okay? And each of those pairs exist in a totally different realm. They're separate from each other. They have nothing to do with each other. But occasionally spirit comes down to earth, such as when God comes down to Sinai and touches it. So in that conventional sense, it's based on what we call in philosophy a dualism. There are two separate and different substances that have nothing to do with each other. And to be spiritual in that sense means to believe in that non-natural world. The fancy word is transcendent. That which transcends goes beyond. And what does it go beyond? It goes beyond the realm of nature, the realm of space and time, that which we can experience and feel and touch and smell and taste and measure. Okay? That's the traditional belief. And people, we assume in ancient times, when they said, I'm a spiritual person, if they ever did, meant that I believe in something not of this world, okay, that is incorporeal, has no body. It's a spirit. A ghost is a spirit, as I said, and an angel is a spirit. So lots of little different spirits, but God is the big spirit. The contemporary use, I contend, and I believe to a great extent, we're beyond. That consciousness has moved beyond a belief for the most part in spiritual beings, although many people still believe in them, and we have to trust their belief. I mean, we cannot, at least trust their integrity when they say they believe in it. But for most people today, spirituality in the current idiom is more a category not of theology, but of psychology. And what they mean is a deeply held or emotional experience of some sort. What is the structure and the nature of the experience? In my interpretation, it's a sense of emotional contact with something bigger, grander, and more encompassing and enveloping than we are. What could that be? It could be the human community. People will say when they sing together, they have a spiritual experience. What they mean is they feel a sense of connection with other human beings. Other people will have a sense of connection with nature. I'm part of nature, and when I experience that I'm really a part of nature, then I'm having a spiritual experience. Other people will feel it with tradition, and tradition is empowering. To feel that there were ancestors thousands of years ago who gave me their moral or genetic inheritance, and they were doing the same thing I was doing, perhaps, is a sense of connection with the past. And for many people, it's a presumed connection with a higher power. What they mean by that, there are 1,000 different, there's many interpretations there. But the notion, the category that's important here in the modern idiom is connection with something bigger, grander, more encompassing, and more enveloping. So I don't know, is this clear? Okay, that's my understanding of what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Very fast, very fast. I have something to add. The term spirituality has come into vogue really only in the past 15 years or so. Now, if you examine most of the material that is being published about spirituality, and a lot of it is being published by the Catholic Church, what spirituality has come to mean, its popular use today, is religion, deeply held, deeply felt religion without institutions and without the responsibilities which the institutional religions traditionally demanded from their adherents. It's a kind of halfway house on the road to religion. That is how the term is used today.
And it's freelance.
And it's freelance, yes. Now, I want, since everybody's talking about spirituality, I'll tell you what I mean by it. When I say the spiritual, I mean the true, the good, the beautiful, and the holy together. Whenever something is true, good, beautiful, and holy, it's spiritual for me.
All right, Joe. This gentleman here.
Holy just means important, of the greatest importance. That's all that holy means.
You're next.
What?
All right.
Watching.
Firstly, I'd like to thank you on behalf of myself and my two colleagues we're from Buffalo, New York, members of a Reform congregation. And my question follows on a comment that Dr. Schumann was making, and also perhaps John Dewey's God as more. William James.
Right.
All right. I'll read the rest so no mistakes. There are increasing comments about the confluence of science and religion. There's acknowledgement of the limitations of human knowing, but also the increase in that ability to know, which may be unbounded. An example is the development of the paradigm of quantum mechanics and its inferences into the extra-atomic world. And the question is, what is the secular approach to science and the mysteries that it not only solves, but also introduces?
To address that
It was
question.
addressed to Joe. It was addressed to Joe.
Oh, to Joe, I'm sorry.
Addressed to me? That's a tough question. I mean, I can only answer it. Personally. I think that new scientific investigations, which go beyond the capacities of all but the most limited specialists, okay, when we're talking about particle theory or quantum mechanics or string theory and so forth, this is really on the avant-garde, the cutting edge of science. But my general intuition, being a total layman in this area, is that further scientific investigation will not resolve outstanding metaphysical questions like, is there a God or not? I just don't think science will resolve those questions. But having said, I mean, to touch on something that you had said, I believe that there are unknowns in the universe. And I would argue that there are unknowables. That there is, and I will say this humanist that I am, there is an element of mystery in human things, and that can generate a type of spiritual wonderment and awe, and I think that's okay. What I don't do is take that sense of mystery and unknowableness, okay, and turn it into a shtick, all right? I don't make a fetish out of it, let's say, like Catholicism does. Nor do I take what the revealed religions do. They say, well, we can't know things, but we can know it through revelation. That's been the response to mystery that the traditional religions have come up with. I don't accept it, but I think that there are, we can, you know, as far as science pushes back and resolves problems, there are still new problems that emerge, and I think that that's part of the process of the human intellectual adventure, and there will always be things mysterious to the mind. And in some ways, we have to incorporate that into our deeper humanistic appreciation of the world in which we live. In other words, I think reason will only, and science will only take us so far, but there will always be boundaries beyond the known that ought to inform, in some sense, a sense of humility about our place in the universe, and I don't think that's bad. Okay, so that's my response to that.
Joe, you have the microphone?
Yes. My name is Joe Goodman. I live in Washington, D.C., also known as the last plantation in the United States. What I want to say to the panel is I, for one, see a definite difference between what the Israelis, how the Israelis talk, and how the Americans talk. Yaakov, I love you. You talk straight. I understand what you say. I don't have to necessarily eat the whole plate, but it's geschmack to be on the same table with you. When you say, I believe in human beings, and what is good for humanity is more important than God, that's straight memistic talk. And I, for one, appreciate you talking like this, which you've always done. You bring a quickness and a need to end all the verbiage and get to the nitty-gritty, which is what I find to be the difference between how the Israelis talk and how the Americans talk. The Americans can reden, azay, verstehst du mir, azay, in circles. When you guys talk, you're talking about living, about dying, about the need to exist another day, about fighting for the right to live. That's one thing I want to say. And again, to Shalomet and to you, Yaakov, live to be 1,000 years old. I want to tell my friend who is running as the campaign manager for Aretha Franklin that after lunch I got a call from her bubba and she's not running.
Are there any other?
I'd like to respond to that if I may. I'd like to respond to that.
Well,
I want to defend the Americans.
all right, Manny.
Joe is his name? Joe?
Up there.
Joe.
Yes. No, over there, Bill.
I share your feeling about Yaakov. But I want to defend myself and my fellow Americans. We're trying to provide motivation for, Jewish survival in an environment where most people view it as superfluous. We're trying to preserve whatever of the past can be preserved and to build for the future so that this community, which lives outside of Israel, can preserve its Jewishness and perhaps make a contribution to humanity. It's not so easy. To a very large extent, they have an easier job in Israel than we do.
Violette Attal-Lefy from Paris, France. I agree with what you say when you say that the best way to be Jewish is first to enjoy to be Jewish, and I enjoy very much to be Jewish now, especially after this colloquium. And I like the way we manage in the secular humanistic Judaism, to manage with the pluralistic view and the renewal of the Judaism. And I love relativism. Relativism not only in the way we've managed with all the trend of the Judaism, but also in the future of Judaism. I mean, I like to put another relativism. I like to think that we are at the vanguard of the Judaism now, and that we are in an answer for many people of today, a majority of Jews in today. And as I am sure there is no doubt, for me that it is an answer for the future. In the long, long way of the future of the Jews, I like also to think that we should think that already that we should think that we are the past for so many generation in the future. And I like to put this relativism in the time, in the long, long time of Judaism. I would like to know what this kind of remark inspired to you.
Did you mean someone in particular?
So she meant you.
You meant me?
So she did.
Ah, no.
Anyone. She says anyone.
Is your question, do we see secular humanistic Judaism as the vanguard of Judaism? Is that your question? Right. So will future generations think of us?
We are the past. We have to think us as we are the past for the future.
We have to think of ourselves as
the
this.
Bund, as the Zealot were the past for us, and
Right.
we are the past for them.
Yes. Dan, you want to respond to that?
If you're referring to humanism, I think you're talking about Jewish humanism, aren't you? I mean, if you secular humanism, secular Jewish humanism. I mean, I would make one point about that, as an American who lives in Wales, coming to you for the first time. I think you are a great group and an exciting group, but you are, I think, a worryingly small group, and you are also you are also a post-40-year-old group, and I think that if you are really going to be a vanguard, you have got to think of ways, I'm sure you are all the time, but you've got to think of ways that this very small, relatively small movement can repackage and proclaim its message to the young, to future generations. You are here as a beacon, a bright light in a dark world, in a dark, nasty world, but I think you have got to think, how can you market yourself and package yourself and rethink yourself for all those out there whom you want to attract?
I would just like to add to that it's been my observation, this is a forum about Jewish identity, that really and truly Jewish identity for most people means their memories of their oldest living relatives. Whatever to me, Jewish identity is what my Zaidi was like. That's the beginning of it. That's from there on I start to have my own variations. But I hark back to my Zaidi because most Jews are not historians. Some Jews are capable of saying, well, what Yehuda Halevi was, I am. But most of us, we think of the oldest Jews that we know. And you in this room are probably, in many cases,